and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Over 2 million Ukrainians have traveled to Europe without visas since the visa-free regime between Ukraine and the EU came into force 2 years ago on June 11, 2017. Since then, Ukrainians have made over 42 million trips to 30 European countries that implemented the agreement. According to the Ukrainian Mission to the EU, it is through its citizens that Ukraine has begun real integration into the European Union. To talk more about this, we're joined in the studio today by Ivanna Klympush-Tsintsadze. She's the Vice Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. Hello, and thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, as I have already mentioned, Ukraine gained visa-free regime with the European Union 2 years ago. And over that time period, a little over 42.5 million trips to the European countries by Ukrainians have been traced. On top of that, during the second year of the visa-free regime, the number of the travels grew by almost 4 times. Why such a difference?
The number of the travels using biometrical passports.
Yes.
That's the case, because some of the people have actually had previously visas and or they didn't have the biometric passport. So there is an increase in those Ukrainians who are getting biometrical passports, and also those who have expired visas and now already using the biometrics for going to the EU. And we see the increase actually very seriously, and we also see the increase in traveling by different means of transportation of Ukrainians. So all the myths that have been there, that Ukrainians first will not get the visa-free with the EU, and then that they will not be using this opportunity, have proven to be false.
Maybe that's why we have an increase in the second year, because the first year was such kind of a pilot year, the test, and now people have actually grew with the idea that Europe is open and they can do it.
And also, you know, the increased numbers of different means of travel that are also not that expensive for a lot of Ukrainians.
Are we talking about air carriers?
As well.
Let's talk about air carriers. The number of air carriers, especially the low-cost ones, have also increased in the year 2018-2019. I'm guessing, if I'm not mistaken, by 13.5%, and now they make up in total out of the 27% out of the all air carriers. How does that affect the cross-border business in Ukraine?
Well, it's not necessarily that traveling by air, you are only using that opportunity to travel for business, because you also can travel for tourism as well. Yes, exactly, or for studies as well, and so there are different opportunities why you're doing that, and obviously, some of the businesses are also developed because there is an easier opportunity and easier access to the EU countries, and also cheaper access to the EU countries.
Exactly. This year or the previous year, if I'm not mistaken, a Ukrainian-based air carrier, 2 Ukrainian-based air carriers have also appeared in the Ukrainian market. How do they handle the competition?
Well, you probably can judge on your own, because they used to have in the year 2018, I think, 8 different lines, so the different destinations to which they were making their flights, and now in 2019 they already have 33. So that means that they are getting shares of this market, and I think that they will be only increasing in this capacity. So this is also a very positive development for internal competition and also external competition. So Ukrainians are becoming also players. Slowly, though, on the European air market as well.
Since there is an increase in the number of air carriers and the flights, will Ukrainian airports be prepared to handle this flow?
Well, first, we have had, some work done back in 2012, I think, right, when we were preparing for the Europ. And at that point, there was some work done on the capacity building of the Ukrainian airports. However, it didn't get into the possibility of using this capacity that was built at that point only after visa-free, and only after all the changes that have been made over this last 5 years. We have been seeing the need and the increased capacity being used already. Some of the airports, though, in some cities where airports have been neglected for years, for decades rather, they are being renovated, and there is definitely still a need to invest. And I think that this is a positive investment opportunity for both internal companies and external companies as well.
Let's come back to the purposes of the travel. Do Ukrainians usually travel on business, or to study, or on tourism purposes?
I do not know the statistics, like exactly, who is traveling for what, because we are a free country. We're not asking on the border anymore why you are going to the EU, which I think is very positive. Some people from our country could really recall the possibility, those times when we actually did have to get a special permission to leave the country, and in several capacities, in several different ways, explain why are we traveling to this or other country, and that has been already a victory when you had the permission to leave for a couple of days. So therefore, this is totally changed. So I don't think that we have specifically the statistics who is going on tourism, who is going on business, who is going for studies, or for other opportunities. But I think it's all of that, to some extent, being mixed.
And still, do Ukrainians at least try to explore the job market in the European Union?
Yes, they do, and actually quite a few of the...
quite successfully.
Quite a few of the European countries, especially Eastern European countries, are, unfortunately, for Ukrainian economy, are competing for the Ukrainian employees right now, because they've also experienced this trend of immigration from their countries, of work immigration, work travel, and now they're trying to look for professionals to substitute their own workforce. So this is a challenge for us here in Ukraine, and definitely for us it's important to further focus on creating the economic opportunities for every single Ukrainian citizen in Ukraine, in order for them to have a kind of dignified chance to choose where they want to realize their ambition, and and how do they see their future life. I think that we are on the right way, but it takes time to actually come back from the minus situation after we have lost like 20% of our economy because of the attack of the Russian Federation on Crimea and on Donbass, and also because of the ruining economic policy of President Yanukovych and his if I may say the word team in that sense. We unfortunately had to rebuild a lot over this period of time, and it's only now that the macro-financial and macroeconomic stabilization is gradually positively impacting the labor market in Ukraine.
And yet and still, I'm guessing we're not looking at the threat of a brain drain right now.
Well, I think the world is so globalized that brain drain is happening all over the world, and for us it's also a challenge. But also there are some of the possibilities that we see, that also this globalization and the IT infrastructure is giving us the possibilities that people can work here internally from Ukraine, actually working with different contractors from other countries across the globe. So therefore, it's both ways. The globalization is giving both the brain drain, but at the same time allowing for new opportunities to work from internally from one other country, and work for other companies that are international.
When Ukraine gained visa-free regime with the European Union, were there any additional or extra security measures implemented on the borders?
144 of those different specific tasks that we've agreed to fulfill before we received the visa-free regime definitely also included the improvement of the security of the border crossing, but also the easiness also of the border crossing as well. So these are kind of complementary things. Right now, we are in the government working on the strategy for integrated border management that will further upgrade our capacity to provide for comfortable, secure, human-oriented border crossings between Ukraine and all the other countries that we have the borders with. So therefore, this is, but this will be yet another stage, and that I think and I hope that in the longer run will get us to that point where we can be also applying for the Schengen zone.
Speaking of stages, at which stage is Ukraine right now in terms of being fully integrated into the European Union?
Well, we are far from being fully integrated to the EU. We don't even have the negotiations of the candidate status at this point, but we do have the association agreement, which allows us to work very seriously and intensively on the implementation of the rules and procedures that are working in the EU countries here in Ukraine.
How many of those are fulfilled in Ukraine already?
That's becoming more compatible and also and much closer to the EU. Moreover, let me just add to that. Moreover, we have identified 4 major areas, priority areas of implementation of the association agreement, and 2 of them, digital integration and energy integration, are actually foreseeing from both sides this de facto sectoral integration of Ukraine in the different markets of the EU. So this will be already, with one foot in the EU when we will fulfill all of our obligations. At this point, every single year, we are increasing the number of the scope of the implementation of the association agreement, and it is growing. For the last year, I think it was 2018, it was like 42% of the tasks for that year have been implemented. We're still building the capacity of the Ukrainian ministries, of the Ukrainian civil service to provide for the challenges that the association agreement implementation requires. And also, there's a huge need of cooperation between the parliament, the government, and the president of Ukraine. And this particular situation that we have right now, it's unfortunately is postponing every single action in our way of implementation of the association agreement. So we really need constructive cooperation where every single part of the government bodies, any institutions, will be playing its instrumental and crucial and positive role in this process.
You just brought me to my last question. The newly elected president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, under his ruling, we're not changing the road towards the EU, right?
I'm happy that during his Brussels visit, he has announced and declared that Ukraine will be following the European and Euro-Atlantic integration path. And now I think the major point is to watch for the actions, because if the actions will be not corresponding to the declared goals, then we will have to be worried, and then we'll have to work actively to ensure that the president is fulfilling the constitution, which says already that the strategic goals of Ukraine are membership in the EU and NATO.
Thank you so much for coming. Ukraine is on the right path.
Thank you.
You will stay there. Thanks again. That was Ivanna Klympush-Tsintsadze. She is the Vice Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. Thank you so much for watching UATV. Stay tuned for the rest.